This is finally the breakdown video for Valleys, one of the landscape projects that I made a few months ago, or a few weeks ago. And I got a lot of questions about kind of the texture specifically, so you can see it here, kind of what that looks like. And this is kind of what the scene looks like, which might not look as impressive, maybe some of you guys might have thought. So here I've got like kind of the river running through, and then the landscape itself. So there are a few very important things um, that make the valley look as good as it does. And the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the base mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hide this and I'll show you guys by sort of sculpting a new base mesh. So we're going to go let's call this valley G, the original valley. And I'm going to create a new one. So we'll go first to origin, mesh, scale up the plane, and I am just going to go into sculpt mode. So a very important thing when making the valley is making sure that your base mesh has enough detail. So of course, as you can see, I like to use clay strips when sculpting, and then I just kind of sculpt away. I raise some parts and kind of just play around with it and figure out what looks good and what looks bad. And so usually I'll come in close where I kind of want that more mountain effect, or I guess more like hill-like effect to be. So you just kind of want to go around with the clay brush and just sculpt it. Well, and this is where it's very important to kind of maintain that detail. So you're going to want to use quite a bit of detail, and I guess this is why it does make it a bit difficult if you have a slower computer or laptop, whatever device you use, Blender on. If it's a bit slow, it won't be able to process, the high density mesh as easily as mine does. So that's, I think, what makes this a bit difficult and what also can limit some of you guys. If you guys don't have an as good machine, you can't really get that extremely detailed base mesh, which is what I am currently trying to sort of make. And another important part here is that you use a lot of reference. So when creating the valley, I just searched up valleys on Google or search it up. So I'll go like valley images. I don't know. And then you kind of just look and see what you find. So for example, here we see a few valley shots. And then this is kind of just what I will use as like something to recreate. So I just kind of look at it and, you know, looking at the reference and then looking at the thing that you're making, kind of just go through it there and you kind of try sculpt your base mesh to look a bit like that image. Then we add in our camera. See, nuisance. So open up camera one, set our shot. And usually what I'll do is maybe, like for example here, I think it'd be nice if I have a bit of a mountain coming up the back. So I'm just going to create it on the same sculpt, like on the same plane. Sometimes I'll also work with multiple cubes and like meshes that I can create. Then I have a bit more control with the landscape I make. But I think now just making it on the same plane is fun. So you can see I'm kind of just playing around, looking to see what I can get. So what you really want to do is have that like kind of overlapping. That also adds a lot of realism to it. and is able to make your scenes look a lot bigger. So now we can move on to some of the texturing. So obviously this isn't an extremely detailed scene, but I think for the purpose of this video, it'll be enough. So first you can see this is what it looks like now. Shade it smooth. Go into our shader editor. And we create a new Crispy SDF. So I'm gonna kind of create a simple one, and then I'll show you guys the actual one that I use for valleys afterwards. But this is just gonna kind of help bring you guys through also my thought process with how I made the valley. So first, the first thing that I always add is geometry, geometry node, and then I separate the X, Y, Z. And the reason why I do that is that I can get the Z axis, like the Z kind of, I don't know how to call that, but essentially I can separate the top down part, the top part of the valley, and kind of the parts where we'll have a more rocky terrain. So I'm gonna color ramp here, and I would just kind of pull that in, make this constant, that'll be a bit better. Something like that. And this way I have a bit more control over where there will be grass and where there will be grass. And of course now you can see that we're already kind of getting this nice separation of where we'll have those like rocky cliffs and where we'll have like the more grass fields. You see this is what it looks like, and right now it doesn't look that good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually add in a noise texture. Control T. What we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want this noise texture. A bit of detail, a bit of roughness. Look at this color ramp. We're gonna make this ease. I think should be good. And we are going to want to. I think we can use a math subtract. I don't know if this is gonna give us what we want. Yeah, not really. Not really, because what we want is we want the edges to be subtracted. So I'm going to do something like this. This might be nice. Actually, no, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to flip this color ramp. And so these parts are going to be the parts where we get, the black parts are going to be the parts where we get the grass, and the white parts are going to be the part where we get the rock. So now I'm going to come here, and I'm going to add in a noise texture here. I'm going to mix the two together. You'll see how this looks. Plug this in here. Let's bring the factor down, something like that. So for now, I'm just going to select this. See what this looks like. It's not really exactly what I want. Seems to really be struggling with axis position. Okay, cool. Now this should be a bit better. We should be able to give it more roughness. Of course, as you can see, that looks a lot nicer. So now it's a bit more like the separation between grass and rock is a bit more smooth. I'm gonna kind of pull this in a tiny bit more. Get this. I'm gonna go color ramp again. Pull this in. And then I'm gonna add this to a displacement. It's gonna be the first thing that we're gonna do. Now, if you don't have that good of a laptop or computer, you can leave it like this. So rather than using the I'll show you right over here. In settings, I'll usually set this to displacement and bump. And now it looks really weird, but what you can see is that it's actually displacing the mesh. And leaving it as bump only gives you an effect that looks like it's displacing the mesh. So the plane is actually staying the exact same, but it's kind of using, it's like an optical illusion, right? It looks like there is actual displacement happening, but there's no displacement happening at all. So we're going to put this as displacement and bump. And our mesh isn't really high quality enough to do this, but should still be fine. So we're gonna kind of just push this up a tiny bit. Something like that. Still a bit too high. Like 01. And of course, as you can see here, we get a little bit of a rough landscape like that. So what we're gonna try and do is make this smoother. So this ease, we're gonna pull this in, out, I'm gonna plug this into the height. Because essentially what we want is we want that fade to be a bit smoother, but for it to still feel rocky and rough. So I am doing this wrong. Just realized we don't want it to be there, we want it to be this one. Here we go. That looks better. So what we get is this, which is too big. So we're gonna bring this down to like 2, 5. And the thing is, this should only be rocky in the parts where there are rocks, right? So we're going to use this as a factor for our cliff area. What we want to do is we actually want to invert this, and this will be white, and the rest will have that. All right, I'll plug this into the height. Now you can see we get displacement in the rocky parts where there is grass. It is just like not rough. So I'm gonna make this a bit less, maybe a tiny bit more. 0.25. That looks nice. And we're gonna plug this entire thing just into a bump. I'm gonna make this one a tiny bit smaller, so I'm gonna duplicate this. That in. Bring that up. Plug this into the height. Let's see what we get. Bring this tiny bit down. Looks nice. Plug this into normal. And now we get a bit of something like this. Now, it's obviously it's not perfect yet, but when you add in the rest of the stuff, it should look good. So this is kind of what we're using as our separation right now, which is still a bit shady, and obviously that's happening because now with our displacement, since it's actually displacing the mesh, our z-axis has also changed, so, which is fine. It's still going to give a good result. I'm going to add in a diffuse BSDF for the grass. I'm just going to make it green for now. Actually, no, I'm going to add in a color random. Take this noise texture, duplicate it. Now, if I'm still going too fast for you guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to break it down afterwards at the end. You can kind of see what I am doing. Try see if you can try explain it so that you can also follow along easier. So here we're going to kind of select a color, and we're going to want like a lighter color, like a more dark green. So we have like a light green and a dark green, and that's going to give us some nice contrast for our grass. Because obviously we cannot afford to have a bunch of different grass strands here. So just kind of pick out colors that look good in your scene. You think look good in your scene. And we're going to add this bump right here to give our grass a bit of roughness or ground a bit of roughness. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to pull this in, start part in and this light part in a bit more to get that color contrast a bit higher. We're going to mix this and use this as our this is our factor. So essentially this is going to separate the grass and the rock from each other. So I think I am going to want this to be a bit closer. Something like that looks pretty decent. So I think this is because of the subtraction. We're subtracting this from there. I really just want this value here. There we go. Uh, okay. Trying to think if I like this. I feel like it might be too much rock. Uh, I guess we'll see later how we feel about it. We'll see later how we feel about it. Because I can also change this and have the white be a bit more vibrant here. That was not smart. Have the white be a bit less vibrant here. Something like that might look a bit better. Let's see. No, I'm gonna move this tiny bit more back. Yeah, that looks nice. Because of course you can see now we're getting a bit more of like a valley look. So we're just gonna add in fog, trees, and we're gonna create our texture for our rocky environment. So I am messing this up right now. Let's duplicate this, and we're gonna use our main thing that we're gonna use for the rocks are simple noise textures. So we're gonna use this noise texture first. We're gonna duplicate it. I'm not very good at sorting, so my node setup is always very messy. I'm really sorry about that. I'm gonna make this 16 and make this 0.75. We're gonna come in with our color ramp, convert it back to normal, get something like this, which looks pretty not good. So we're gonna reduplicate this, get this, make it super big, mix the two together. Still looks pretty crap, doesn't it? Like it doesn't have that much detail. So I'm gonna up this one a bit. It's looking a bit better. Now this is eventually what I'm going to use for the bump rather than this one that we have here. So we're going to take this, plug this into high texture here. Um, I think that should be fine for the ground as well. Now, when you look at, let's go back, oh shoot, let's go back to the valleys here. When we look at it, what we see with the rocky textures is that it's very much like some chunks, lines, and stuff like that. So we're going to try and mimic that. We get lines. So I'm still going to use a noise texture because I love the noise texture. It's very, very good texture. So we're going to plug this noise texture in here. And what we want to do is we want to get lines. So how can we do that? We can change our scale. So we're going to kind of scale it on the Z axis. And then we can scale it up here and scale on the roughness. We're going to add in a color ramp right over here. We're going to pull this color ramp in and kind of get these lines. So we still want to scale it a tiny bit up on the X. So those lines become a bit more apparent, right? So now we've got like this line texture. And we've got this one here. We want to mix these two together. That's what we're going to do right now. We're going to mix them together. Nice. And then we get something like this, which is starting to look a bit better. It still looks a bit off though. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these noise textures, we're going to duplicate this one here. I'm going to make this one. I'm going to pull this tiny bit in, pull this here. We're going to use this as a factor for this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to control one of these. I'm going to tiny bit up. Okay, because I think the white areas is where we've got the thing. Okay, wait, let me quickly reverse this bit. So I think the white areas is where we get our texture. So we're gonna kind of do something like this. Bring this a tiny bit down so it's not too apparent. And then I think this looks pretty good for a simple, nice rock texture. We're gonna come here in our color ramp. We're just gonna play around with the colors, kind of set it to a nice, like rocky, colory look. I don't really know what that looks like, but yeah, whatever it looks like, it'll be fine. Just gonna kind of play around with these till we get something that feels right. You know? Pull this down a tiny bit. Now, a bit more up. Make it a bit more gray. Oh, greeny. Come to the base color. And that is what our rocky texture looks like. I don't really like it. I think I want it to be a bit darker. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here and we're just going to use a mix this black, make sure it's fully black. You can see this is what it looks like if it's fully black, and this is what it looks like semi-darkened. What I'm going to do is I'm going to up the roughness. I'm going to bring down the specular quite a bit. And that gives us more of that rocky texture that we're looking for. Now with the grass, that's starting to look pretty good. Now the only thing is the kind of mountain texture here. And so this is kind of where what we see here, like this artifacting happening, where it kind of looks like, actually I'll zoom in so you can kind of see what the problem is. It kind of looks like little triangles. This is what happens when our base mesh isn't detailed enough. So right now there's not really much that we can do about it, so we're just going to leave it like that. And at the distance, you will really won't be able to see it as much. And also when we add in the volumetrics and stuff like that, it should all look a lot better. So what we're going to do now is we are going to come into vertex group. We're going to weight paint. Okay, I'm going to do this a lot faster. So I'm going to go here. And we're just going to weight paint where we see green. Now this is where you want to do it in your image, kind of in your camera view, because you don't want to paint everything green, especially because when you do add the trees, it's going to be very render heavy because you'll have a lot of particles. But yeah, for now we're just going to kind of add it in there. Come over here to the top, and we'll put this on, and then we're going to go here, and I'm just going to add it all over there. Add some stuff over here. That's not visible. Add some stuff over here. Let's see where this is that we're looking at. So we're looking over here. So here I'm going to want a lot more trees to be visible, especially because my camera is also over there. Okay. Something like that. Come in my weight over here. And I'll just go, oh, there we go, that's a bit better. Fills that area up a tiny bit more. Can we get something that looks just a bit nicer? So we can also add some stuff over there, like some trees coming up over there. Some trees coming up on the side over here. More trees here and there and there and there. That's fine. Doesn't really matter. This part doesn't really matter. It's as long as you've got some trees, you know, it looks a bit like a valley. It should be fine. Dude, I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional, so you probably shouldn't trust me. But anyway, we're gonna move this to scene collection. Here we have move this to scene collection as well. Here we have a collection of trees. So we are gonna quickly check them out. So for my previous valley one, I made a bunch of different trees, tree types. As you can see over here, these trees do not have a bark texture. And since we are looking closer up, I think I'll create a quick bark texture for these trees. So let's change this. Add in a Voronoi texture. We are going to scale this up. Distance to edge. Control T. Object. Bring this down. Duplicate this. Bring this way down. Detail a tiny bit up. Here. Roughness up. Detail up. Roughness up. Mix the two together. Factor it. Bump. Nope. Bump. Height. Look at what our tree looks like now. This is some nice tree bark. This is very simple bark. But I also don't want to spend too much time on it because this isn't the important part of the video. I'm just gonna kind of color this in until we get something that looks nice. that. And I'm also going to take this down a notch. Plug this in here, specular down, worthless, look it up. And now we've added some nice tree bark to our texture. Yeah. So these are our trees. The way to create a tree is very simple. We're going to come back here, shift cursor selected, hide this, add in a curve. I've got the sapling tree generator on. You can access it here if you go to edit, preferences, add-on, search of tree, sapling tree gen. There you go. And you just enable that. And then you can go curve, sapling tree gen. You're going to scroll down. I usually use Douglas fir. There you go. That's a tree. We'll go branch splitting, levels 3, leaves, show leaves. Now we've got 3 levels here, so we're going to up the leaves to like 75. Select the leaves, individual origins, there. And we're just going to scale them up. And the reason why you want to scale them up is because, especially if they're trees in the distance, it's going to fill up the trees, and they're going to look a lot more full from further away. Whereas if you have the tiny little leaves that we had before, it'll look like this from further away, which just doesn't have the same effect. Especially when this has the this texture. This is the right texture. And this one has, actually this is the right texture. Oh, I gave it to the leaves. When the leaves have their leafy green texture and the tree has its browny brown texture, when you zoom out, I mean, yeah, it looks fine. When you scale them up, oh wow, this tree is a lot more full. Okay, I'm gonna delete that tree. We've got our trees over here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna come back. Now, your boy, I am your boy. I do not know how to use geometry nodes, so I just use particle systems. Set it on air. I go down to density, group, um, bring the scale to 1. Since we have a collection, we'll have to use collection. Select trees. Now it's very laggy, so we're going to put this at 100 to speed up my laptop a bit more. Also, right. Navigation fucking sucks. My navigation sucks. We'll just do 2 3D cursor. That'll make it easier for this video. So our trees look like this. That's not very nice. We're going to turn fast, rotation, and you're just going to look through this. Oh, global X seems to work. We will upscale randomness, bring the scale of these trees really small. Wow, look, some of these small trees. We're going to make it even smaller. I don't think I can, so we're just going to go to scale, make the size smaller, something like that. We're going to go 1000 again. And this is where you just absolutely obliterate your computer, laptop, whatever you're using, because we are adding millions and millions of trees. And when you look, wow, a realistic shot. It looks so much better. So we're going to come back to white paint, and I'm just going to go here. Now, my laptop can deal with quite a bit. I know that some of you guys might not have that. So if you don't, I recommend going for lower poly trees or using planes instead of actual trees like I'm using here, because that might be easier. And also, you can also split your um, groups based on distance. So, for example, right now I've got one weight paint group for everything. But what I used to do on my old laptop when I would do things, because I have a new laptop now, but my old one freaking sucked. Like, I mean, I had 4 GB of RAM and I didn't even have a GPU. So that's kind of how bad it was. So what I would do is I would create 3 different groups. I would have one for close at the front. This is where I'd have my most detailed trees. And in the middle part, so over here, I would have like semi-detailed trees. You can't really tell. And then at the back, I would have like very low poly trees that are just like a cylinder with a triangle on it. Like seriously, extremely low poly because at the end of the day, all you just see is color. It doesn't matter what it looks like. So that's what I would do. I would sort this would be like my high detail, my mid detail, and then my absolutely lowest detail. And that way you can have you can save up a lot on space, on memory, but you can still have like a lot of those trees and make your valley look extremely full. So now I don't have to worry about that. So I just use one uh weight paint or one vertex group for the entire thing, and then I just power through, which isn't exactly smart, but it works. So I'm just gonna put this on 100. Hope it doesn't crash. Hit save. And that's kind of what it looks like. Now, one thing that I don't like is that the trees at the front are so tall. Yeah, my thing is really lagging right now. Blender might crash. Maybe I was a bit too. Oh, seems to be fine. Let's bring this back at 10. Anyway, what I was about to say was the thing that I don't like is that the trees at the front are a bit tall, which makes sense, but it does block the view. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to weight paint, the correct vertex group. Okay, I'm going to quickly, I got to finish this off. And we're going to go weight, and we're just going to kind of here. And then I'm going to come to size over here, leg. It's good. Whoop. We're going to turn this back on. Now what you'll see is we'll have a bunch of smaller trees in front. Rather than all of those big tall trees, our front will still look full. The trees will just be smaller. So we go back to 100. Wow, our beautiful scene. Now you can do the same for the trees at the back if you think the trees at the back are too tall. In this case, I think it's fine. Um, yeah, I think they are a bit tall, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I'm gonna make this like 0.32 because I want the trees to be even smaller. Make this 100. Yeah, that looks nice. We're gonna commit to weight paint because this area is supposed to also have a lot of trees. This one. This area is supposed to be full. This entire front bit is supposed to be full. Why isn't it as full as I want? There's a little noise texture going on here. Anyway, for the sake of this video, it doesn't really matter, but yeah. Just kind of play around with the settings so you get something that you like. And now we get the part that makes it look super realistic is just adding in a cube, scaling it up, new X, Shift A, principal volume, plug this in, 0.1. I'm gonna kind of move this down, something like that. Brighten the scene up. And you're gonna play with the anisotropy. Dude, I have no idea how to pronounce that. Anyway, that setting, you're gonna kind of play around with it to get something that you like. And you can just play around with it a bit more, kind of get it light at the back. And then we're gonna add in some clouds. Okay, I think maybe I'm doing a bit too much now. But to add in a cloud, you just kind of add a gradient texture, Control T, object, spherical, we're gonna move this back, um, add in a color ramp, plug this into the density view, add in math, subtract, noise, color ramp, Control T, object, plug that in there, detail up, roughness up, play around with the scalars a tiny bit until you get something that you like, add in another, multiply, bring up the density, and we're going to place this right where it can be seen. Where is this thing? Okay, somewhere over there. I don't know. So, yeah, here we got ourselves a real nice dense cloud. I don't know. It doesn't look that good, in my opinion. Um, Anyway, that usually adds some like nice effect to it. So now what I like to do, once we've kind of created this scene, right? It looks okay now, but I don't know. I gotta say I'm not a really big fan of it. Oh shoot, I think it's gonna crash. It's gonna crash. Oh frick. So we added those cubes to the thing as well, to the collection as well. It's fine. Not really, because my laptop's gonna crash. Okay. Let's come here. Scroll down. I'm gonna make this one for now. One. There we go. That looks pretty good. And we're gonna remove these two from there. We go. We're gonna start playing again. Turn this off, and now it should run a bit more smoothly when I type in 100 here. There we go, and now we've got this, which looks pretty crap, but it looks good enough for something that was made in like half an hour. Uh, I guess the saving is what takes the longest. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to play with the different lightings. So this is what I usually do when I feel like my scene doesn't look that good. I'll play around with the default light that Blender has, and I'll see if there's one that just looks a lot better. And if there is, I'll try mimic that lighting in my scene. So in this case, I don't really think that there is one that looks that much better. Um, okay, we're gonna just use this. We're gonna come to world, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this, and we're just gonna play around with this till we get something that looks nice. That's the sun size. We don't want to change that. Control Z. Control Z. Come on, work. Yes, thank you. Thank you. We're gonna change the sun rotation. So change the sun rotation. We're changing the sun rotation. Where's that look? So I'm gonna kind of hide the clouds for now. Metrics. Ooh, that looks pretty nice. That looks pretty nice. It looks like a pretty nice scene. So what we can also do is we can have the sun come right behind there. Ooh, that doesn't look that nice. Does it? So you just rotate the sun a bit more. Now it's on this side. Now this is another important part, is the shadows. That's where lighting really comes into play, is creating these nice shadows. So I don't like that it just like kind of stops here. It's kind of like, dude, I know these values are bigger. There has to be more on the other side. So to do that, how I fix that is, it's a very stupid fix, and I'm sorry if you kind of expected more, but what I usually just do is I take this, the stuff with the trees, hide the trees for now. I'll just take this entire thing. I'm just gonna duplicate it, and we're just gonna move it around till we get something that looks good. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna hide this for now. We're gonna come here, and I'm just gonna go R R R. Sorry, I'm saying like what I'm doing out loud, and that kind of sound why it sounds a bit weird. Um. So yeah, that doesn't look great, but I don't really care. I just realized. But, but that looks a bit more realistic. We add in our trees, we add in our clouds, and we've got a beautiful scene right here. And we can take this away if we want it to be a bit more like just open. We could take this away if we want it to be, oh, that's the plane. Whoops. We could take this away if we want it to be a bit more clear. And this is how you make a really nice, beautiful landscape in like 40 minutes. Everything is procedurally done. Uh, and yeah, that's kind of those are my tricks. Those are my tips. If the video went a bit fast, I'm really sorry. Uh, I hope you were able to learn something. What I'm going to do now, really quick, is I'm going to go through the textures that I made. I think that's something that you guys were really interested in. So let's kind of see how that looked. So what you can see here is the most important parts are obviously the noise texture. So now obviously this looks super confusing, but this is kind of how I create my um what's it called? Factor? Like mask. My mask. That's the word I was looking for, sorry. This is kind of how I create my mask. So we've got our separate XYZ, our mix, our noise texture, our color ramp, and this is kind of how we create the separation between landscape and raw. Now then this is just like extra detail. You can see this is extra detail for our landscape and rock and kind of is creating that separation in the grass because now we don't have any separation in the grass. So it's just going to be rock and grass, and now we get some rocks, some grass. Depending on the shot or on the scene I'm working on, I might not do this. In some parts, I will do this, but I just decided to do it this time. So now you can see we kind of just refine this a bit so that there's more grass in the grassy spots and more rock in the rocky parts. This is my grass texture. It's very simple, very easy. Here you can see it. And this is my rock texture. So the rock texture is a bit more complex than the grass, which is just a noise texture with some detail and roughness. Roughness is very important here. Um, so for our rocks, we again play on the noise texture a lot. So you see we have a very high detail noise texture and a not so high detail noise texture. So this one is like kind of for like big splotches, and this one is for those small like little bumps that we see in our um in rocks, in mountains and cliffs. And then here we have a noise texture that kind of works as like almost a wave texture, except we want it to be more noisy. So it's a stretched out noise texture. Now here you can kind of see what that looks like. We mix it all together and we get this. And then this is the factor for places where there should be like some just normal rocks and places where there should be some more like like structured rocks. We get this, and then this is kind of just like the coloring that you make for it. And then this is what you finally get. And then we also have our displacement, which is essentially just the rock texture, just a noise texture, mixed with a higher detailed noise texture to create um, displacement. So really the displacement is just bump is just like the noise texture itself. I mean the rock texture itself without the colors. That's the bump. And then we get this, and we use the same bump for the grass because that gives it some extra detail. And then for the displacement, it is really just these two mixed together. Just as you can see, that gives us this. And we get this really nice looking texture. Then the next thing is adding trees. Adding trees is really important because that helps with the scale. Of course, as you can see, if I make the trees a bit smaller, it makes our overall scale look a lot bigger. If I make the trees like 0.15, I mean like 0.25, you can see kind of how that plays with the scale of it. And then the last thing that I did was add in some extra mountains or cliffs at the back. Shoot, my thing is actually going to crash. This is it. Ah, dear. Oh, dear. It did not. Okay, we're good. We're good. So I just added in some extra things, thingamajiggies in the back, some extra clips in the back to help with that depth because we want it to seem like it's really far in the distance. So we get that. And then we have our final. Why do I keep on doing this? I'm so fucking stupid. We're gonna hide this real quick. Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Disable viewport. Yes, I hope I didn't re-enable it. I re-enabled it. Okay, cool. This is the final scene that we get. I'm gonna render this out and we'll see what it looks like. Hit save. Come back here, render. I'm going to bring this is offline. Render image. The detail is too high. Resolution is too high for this. I'm going to divide these by 2 because it'll render way faster. Render your image. Okay, now this is obviously the compositing. I'm not going to go over the compositing in this video. I'm just going to leave it like this, which I think looks pretty good. So this is what our final version looks like. This is what our final version looks like. Yay! And that looks like a very nice environment. And of course, as you can see, it is quite easy to make. It just takes time to unpractice to get to this level. Now, obviously, I've made a bunch of these landscapes, so I kind of know what to do and what to look out for. But in the end, you can create something that looks pretty good. Some other things that you can do is you can maybe add some more clouds. You can play around with kind of how you want, where you want your camera to be. So, for example, I can move my camera a bit more up. I'm just gonna come here. I'm gonna quickly keyframe this. It's up, and camera to view. We could kind of get something a bit more like that, which just kind of focuses more on the landscape itself. And we can re-render this out. So one render image. Now you see we got a complete different shot that still looks pretty good. So yeah, I think if I was like fully focusing on this shot, I would obviously add some more trees like here in the foreground over here and just make this a bit more full, but you can still see that we get a really cool um environment either way. So yeah, that's my video. I will wait till this is finished rendering and then I'll do the outro. So that's my tutorial on how you can create these super cool landscapes. Well, if you followed along, that's great. If you have any questions, seriously, just let me know in the comments. I'll get to you as quick as possible. Um, it might take a month before I make another video like this because I really suck at making tutorials and it takes a long time. But this is kind of what it looked like. The final version looks like. So what I'm going to quickly do now is I'm going to get the original valley. So of course, as you can see, this one has a lot more detail, like the base mesh. And I also added a river here, which also has textures. Uh, and this one took a lot longer to make. Of course, you can see we have like a cloud here, and this is our volumetric layer. I think I can show the textures for this. So this is just a simple volumetric thing. It even has like a bit of color. And this like our mist or fog. And this is just the cloud. And you can see I use the same thing here, except I also used a vector curve to give it a bit more form. And this texture is a lot more simple. Of course, as you can see, this one was just a separated X, Y, Z. And then we had a color ramp, which we used for the thing. And the reason why this one is a lot more easy, this setup is a lot easier than the setup that we just made, which I think is this one. Like, yeah, the setup looks a bit more complex, is because this one has a lot of detail. So when you look at the base mesh, and I will show you guys this right now, when you look at the separate XYZ, it already has so much detail. Like the original mesh has so much detail that we don't need the noise texture. And here I do use a noise texture for displacement, but it is a very simple one. Of course, as you can see, this is the noise texture that we use for displacement. There's nothing too special about it. It's got minimum, like just a little bit of roughness, high detail, of course, and then when we mix it together, we get this displacement. So, this is the rock texture for it. The rock texture is also quite simple. There's nothing really too special about it. In fact, even when you zoom in close, it looks pretty bad. It's very similar to the one that I did before, but it's even a bit more simple. Again, because our base mesh already has so much detail, we don't need to add as much detail in our texture. And you can see this is our simple um, grass texture, and it's just like this. When you combine it all together, you get something that looks like this, which looks pretty neat. So we can go back into the original camera here. This is kind of what you get. So that was my breakdown video of how I made valleys. This is not a breakdown video of how I made valleys, but it's more a tutorial about how I make um these environments just in general and how you can make them too. And I hope you guys do make them. Blender might crash, doesn't matter, the video is over anyway. I hope you guys make them and let me know if you did and if it worked and if the tutorial helped in any way. If you want parts more clear, if you want me to put photos up on YouTube, uh, I can do that. Just let me know. And thank you for watching the video. Yes. Uh, that's pretty much it. Have a great day or a great night, depending on when you're watching this video. And yeah, that's it. That's how I make these environments. So cool. I'm actually gonna post this environment, by the way, to my YouTube and Instagram and everything like that because this one is actually pretty good. So yeah. Okay.